Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact.
So this is Jonathan Goldhill. Welcome to the show Disruptive Successor. Today, my guest is Robert Rivinius. He is the Executive Director of the Family Business Association of California, which was founded in 2012. 30 years experience you have prior to that, I think, as an association executive, and you've been up in Sacramento all that time. Before that, you ran the California Building Industry Association, which was a 7,000 member organization representing the home building industry in California. So, Robert, thank you very much for coming on the show. You're my first guest. Tell us, first of all, how are things going in Sacramento under the pandemic?
Well, very challenging. As you know, things around the state are mostly shut down, and or at least quarantined, or whatever the word is. I'll give you an example. I'm on the 21st floor of my office building here. I'm the only one here on the floor, and I have a small office. But the California Chamber has the rest of the floor, and they're all off. Most all working at home and things. So that's kind of the way it is down here. Restaurants are closed. I've been told we've lost 1,200 businesses in the Sacramento area alone.
Wow.
So it's very challenging, and some of these folks won't come back. They just won't be able to reopen because they've lost everything they have. And we won't argue the merits of the shutdown and everything else, but it's been difficult.
So tell us a little bit about the Family Business Association. Tell us what is the mission of it? Tell us a little bit about your membership. Maybe the size, the locations of the companies. Tell us a little bit.
Sure. So just the brief history is when I retired from California Building Industry Association, as you mentioned, I started a little management business, and I was approached by a few family business owners who said, it's probably time we have an organization to represent family businesses, because we do have some unique issues. And there are other organizations that have a lot of family businesses, like the Farm Bureau, et cetera, but they're not all family businesses. So we put it together, and as you mentioned, in 2012, we just finished our 8th year at the Capitol. We are a 501c6 lobbying group, so governmental affairs is what we do. We represent family businesses at the Capitol, and we've been able, as an example, we've been able to hold off a proposed estate tax, which California does not now have, but it was proposed 3 years in a row. We've been able to stop that because we think families are already paying enough. It's really a death tax, and people have already paid tax once. Now they're going to have to pay again when they try to leave something to their heirs. So those are the kinds of things we work on. We've been a great coalition partner in that people like the name Family Business Association. It's kind of like motherhood and apple pie to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. So we get to be a coalition partner in a lot of large coalitions. And we have put together coalitions too. As an example, we put 40 groups together to fight the estate tax, all who have various forms of family businesses in their membership.
And now, are they all in California, Robert,
Yeah.
those groups, or are they outside the nationwide?
Well, no. So this was a California proposed tax.
Okay.
There is a federal estate tax, and we're part of a coalition back there that works on that one. But we only do California issues, so everybody we work with is California centric.
Okay. And are the issues in California much different from the issues from the other states? And
they tend to be more difficult. Mm-hmm. As an example, California likes to take the lead on all kinds of different regulations and requirements and things. As an example, the 12 weeks paid leave for family leave has just been expanded this year from it only impacted families that had 50 or more employees, businesses that had 50 or more employees. They have just reduced that to 5. So we opposed it, and we asked the governor for a veto, and he went ahead and signed it. Think about a business with 6 employees, and one of them's really a key person, and all of a sudden that person's gone for 12 weeks. You can't really replace the person because you have to have a job waiting when the person comes back from their leave. So what do you do? And it's very difficult. For the smaller the business, the more difficult it is. They actually wanted to take it all the way down to 1 employee, and we held it off to 5. But that's the kind of thing we work on that other organizations work on too. We coalesce a lot with the California Chamber of Commerce, California Business Roundtable, but those organizations have a lot of large corporate members.
Mm-hmm.
Our members are all private companies. They're all family owned. We have all the way up to 5 generations. We have some first generation ones who want to be family businesses, as long as they have somebody else in the business. But private companies only, range in size from, we have a fruit stand and bakery down in Stockton with 5 employees. And we've got Bechtel, the largest construction company in America, with 25 or 30,000 employees. So we run the whole gamut. Our typical member is a well-established, successful company of pretty good size, usually about 3rd generation. That's kind of our benchmark typical member. A lot of the younger companies maybe don't understand why they should belong or don't have the wherewithal yet. These older established companies who really want to pass their business down to their children join because they really are interested in what we're doing. We've had good success in keeping members that join. And again, all different sizes, but we have a terrific board of 9 people, and we just meet once a month by phone for about 45 minutes or an hour. And we've had the same lobbying team in place for the whole 8 years, so that helps.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a contract lobbying firm. So actually, our association has no employees at all. I'm on a contract. Everybody is.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So let's talk about why they join and what are their issues, and let's also touch on the fact that probably a lot of their issues relate to national tax and law legislative things. So let's talk first about what are its members' issues, what's important to them, and what's different about family businesses, and what's going on nationally that they can be tuned into.
Well, first of all, what's different is that family businesses aren't, I mentioned Bechtel, but the typical family business isn't a huge company, not like a Google or an Amazon or an Apple. So when a lot of the regulations are put in place, the huge companies just put on another bank of lawyers and bank of accountants and deal with it. A lot of smaller companies can't. I can't tell you how many people, we have membership meetings around the state, and a whole bunch of people come up to me and said, I keep my company at 49 employees because when I hit that 50 mark, everything goes. I'm going to have to add HR people. I'm going to have to add more accounting people. And I asked 2 people specifically from Orange County. I said, could you be larger? And they both said we could have 100 to 150 employees. We just don't want to do it because California makes it too difficult. So this is probably the most difficult state. There are others, New York and Illinois, but this is probably the most difficult state in the union in which to do business. And the family business issues are, like I mentioned, estate taxes, the ability to pass property down from one family member to another, those kinds of things. I can give you an example. A large prominent family bought $100 million worth of property in Santa Monica, and through some good lawyering and CPAing, they were able to keep their tax base. So the folks in Sacramento didn't like that, so they ran a bill to stop that. But the Sacramento, the capital being the place of unintended consequences all the time, they wound up dropping a bunch of benefits that all family businesses had to try to get to this one particular instance or case. So we went in and we had 3 pages of amendments written to put everything back in that had been taken out. And that's the kind of thing we do. And it sounds kind of nuancy, and I guess it is, but it's really important in family businesses because nobody else is doing that.
Right. So do you see that your association is taking a leadership role nationally, and that maybe other organizations may be getting formed or already formed might be following your lead? If we're on the front end of the regulation and other states are following suit, then it seems that family business associations would be needed in these other states as well.
I would think so. I've had a few interest from a gentleman in Chicago called, and he was going to see if he could do something in Illinois. New York and Massachusetts and the other more highly regulated states probably would benefit from it. But to the best of my knowledge so far, there are not any. There are organizations that say they're advocates, but again, their IRS code is 501c3, so they can't really go lobby. What they can do is put out information. That's legal, but they can't go to the Capitol and say, we want to kill SB 1232. Their charter doesn't allow that. So they would have to have a different makeup in order to do it. And again, as I said, we haven't seen any form yet. There's been interest, but I haven't seen anything happen. And being that we're only 8 years old, a lot of people don't even know about us yet. It just takes a long time to get established.
That was my next question. So how many members do you have? How are you growing your membership? How do you get the word out about your organization?
So we have a couple hundred members, and we do membership meetings around the state, and we'll pick up a member or two when we do it. We have a Southern California chapter, and we have a Northern California group that meets. And then a lot of our members, because people are more familiar with the capital from the greater Sacramento region, a lot of our members are from here in the greater Sacramento area. But again, very substantial, typically older companies. And when people find out about us and what we do, they're generally pretty interested in it.
Okay. So there are a number of laws on the ballot right now. By the time the listeners hear, these might have already been passed. Some of them might end up getting contested, as very often happens, or not very often, but it seems to happen sometimes. Tell us a little bit, maybe without going into specifics about the propositions, what are some of those issues about the ones that are most germane to family businesses? So if I'm a family business owner and I'm listening, like, what should I be thinking about or concerned about in a multi-generational business?
Generally, the few that are of most impact that will have been decided by the time this is published have to do with taxes. Mm-hmm. Raising property taxes. The public employees have put an initiative on the ballot, which again will have been passed or failed by the time this comes out. But it would really increase property taxes by about $11 billion in the state. Our members are very concerned about that. I can give you a specific example. Talked to one of our board members the other day, and he has multiple businesses, but he has an old plant that's pretty labor intensive, and it's in kind of in the middle of a town, and they keep the business open because they like to keep the people employed, and they don't make a lot of money on it, but they make money in their other businesses. So he told me if this proposition were to pass, his property tax will go up by $900,000. Which makes his business no longer viable, which means 100 skilled people will probably lose their jobs.
Wow.
So that's what family businesses get concerned about. And these people are highly skilled, but there are only 3 plants like this in the whole United States. So they can't really go down to Modesto or over to, San Francisco and get a job like that. They just have skills in this one area where there's nowhere to take them. And a lot of them are older people because they've been at this plant a long time. So it's really kind of a tragedy, but honestly, the people that put these kinds of things on the ballot really don't care. It's not, it's not an issue for them. There's just never enough tax money for them, so they just keep going.
It doesn't seem like the family business is really even recognized much in politics at all. And with so many businesses being family businesses, I mean, reportedly, and you may know the stats as well or better than I do, but I mean, maybe 2/3 of all businesses in the United States are family business. 2/3 of the GNP is from family.
I can tell you in California, we did some research when we were putting this together. There at the time, there were 1.4 million family businesses just in California, employing 7 million people. At the time, there were 17 million civilian employees in the state, so that's 40%.
Wow.
Of the employees were working for a family business. And the 1.4 million, many of them are, maybe the nail shop on the corner or the small whatever, but also a lot of big, substantial ones, significant ones too. So it's a huge part of the economy. One of the things we did is we got a bill passed that actually put a definition of family businesses into state code. So we got 100% vote in the Senate, 100% vote in the Assembly, and Governor Jerry Brown vetoed it.
Why?
He didn't think it was necessary.
Okay.
He thought we were a solution looking for a problem. And we really weren't, because every time, as I mentioned in the legislation I talked about before, where we had to do the 3 pages of writing, had we had a definition in state code, we could have just said, refer to section 1201.3 or whatever it would happen to be, and we'd have it done. So we had a good purpose and reason for doing it. He just was not convinced we should do it.
Okay. So now you're seeing some trends on the horizon. I imagine one of them is businesses moving out of California with so many people working remotely. The need to be here, to have an office, to have your whole floor is empty. You said earlier. Are you seeing any data points on this that you can share? Does this raise some concerns also and eyebrows?
Yes, it does, for sure. And I've seen more people in the past year. I've seen more people actually leave the state than ever before, by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you what kind of brought it home to me is in raising money for the no on this proposition. I had some folks come in. In fact, one fellow was a former congressman who came in to help me work on this. And we were going down the list, and he would say, "Oh yeah, well, he moved to Idaho. Well, he moved to Montana, and his brother's moving to Texas." And I mean, it was like one after the other. We have a very prominent member who has a business with about 12 or 14,000 employees who just told me he's moved to Nevada. Now, when their business is still here in California, they will have to pay California tax. But I'll give you an example of one of our members who works in the whole Western states, all 12. So he lives here in the Sacramento area. If he were to move to Nevada, half his business is out of this state. So he'd only pay half of the 13.3% of his income, which is the maximum in California now.
Mm-hmm.
He could save a lot of money by just moving across the border. So that's one example. And I see it happening. It's really sad because these are good quality people who love their employees and would like to live in California. They just can't handle it anymore.
And is there any advocacy happening where people would be, where you or someone else might be suggesting to them, hey, look, you could move your corporation to Nevada or a lower taxing state. You still have nexus issues, so you've got to pay taxes on income you make in California, but there are these set of benefits. I mean, is that to anyone's advantage to communicate and or articulate that as a position or recommendation?
I'm not sure I quite follow you on the recommendation.
Well, you would basically tell people that unless they had a manufacturing plant, maybe that was difficult to move. But if you had a business that was easy to relocate to another state, and you can still do business in California.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't do that because we want people to stay here and we want to make California a better place to be.
Right.
For businesses, that's our goal. Our goal is not to get people to move. It's to get people to stay here and keep their people employed. So we would not do that. And I can give you an example of people who absolutely can't move, that we have a lot of members that are farmers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you
sure.
Move a farm.
Yeah.
I mean, you can move yourself, but your revenue is still going to be in California, so you're still going to pay California tax. And we have a lot of people in the ag industry that just couldn't move. And some of these plants, like I mentioned, the one that's tax is going to go up incredibly high, they can't move. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to pick up and build this kind of a plant somewhere else. So it's just probably something that would go away and wouldn't be around anymore.
Well, I imagine that you feel like you have an uphill battle to climb. You're in a state that's got more regulations or leads the way in regulations along with New York and Illinois, which arguably for some might be making them look more progressive, but it certainly makes a business climate more difficult. So that must feel like a challenge. Am I right?
It definitely does. It's frustrating because it's such a wonderful state in so many ways, but it's getting to be so difficult to do business here. And the legislature and the governor just seem tone deaf to some of the things they do. I don't think they have any idea what it really does to people. And it's very frustrating. But, to paraphrase or quote Winston Churchill, we just can't ever give up.
Tell us about the many years that you spent with the Building Industry Association, and some of the issues maybe that construction companies, many of my listeners are contractors. I'm sure you are very up to speed on those issues still. What's going on in California that's different in other states? Why is it, what types of regulations are in place that make it more difficult for them?
So everything's extremely expensive here. Not enough land is actually dedicated or identified or approved for new housing. So the land that's there is much more expensive than it would be in other states. The fees are incredible. I haven't looked lately, but the last time that the top fee to take out a building permit in California was a community in the Bay Area. It was $156,000 for a permit.
Wow.
So it's almost impossible to build an affordable home when you have a $156,000 permit, correct?
Yes.
So then what local government does is they say, well, then we're going to do a thing called inclusionary zoning, where you have to make 25% of the homes affordable.
Right.
Well, what that means is if you're a market rate buyer and I'm somebody looking for an affordable house, you are directly subsidizing me. So you're going to pay X tens of thousands of dollars more for your house so I can buy a less expensive house. I mean, and we used to take it to the extremes. What if we did that with bread? In other words, you went to the grocery store and because you've done well, you pay $4 for a loaf of bread so I can get one for $1. I mean, you can take it to all kinds of extremes and it really doesn't make much sense. So that's what's happening in California. The costs and the fees and the inability to really get things done. I'll give you an example. One of our members has a very nice, beautiful facility up in the Chico area. And he was looking at 3 states. It was Virginia, Tennessee, or North Carolina to do a East Coast version of what he has here.
Right.
He told me that all 3 states offered him free land, build he would be up and running in 6 months, and they build a railroad spike right to his facility.
Wow.
And I said, yeah, and here's what you get in California if you were doing the same thing. We might be able to get your permit in 8 years instead of 12 if we work on it real hard. That's the difference. That's the difference in California and the other states. So the other states that are really hungry. One of our members just opened an operation in Savannah. And he called me and he said, I can't believe they actually wanted me there. And they actually bent over backwards to have me there. And they hand carried things, through the processes things. So they really wanted me to be there. We just don't get that in California.
Well, it's interesting. I moved to California in 1980, and I remember the first thing I read in the bus directory guide to California was California is not a state; it's a state of mind. And I think that it's amazing what sunshine and beaches can do as an attraction strategy to move here and open up businesses. But it does sound like it's getting tougher and tougher. So on this show, we focus on disruptive successors, and that is defined by me as next generation leaders of family businesses who know that they need to disrupt the status quo to take the business to the next level. They need to either change the business model, improve the product or processes in the business, and that they have to adopt a new mindset, a different mindset. They have to understand that what got them here is not going to get them there. Yeah. So I'm wondering what you're seeing at all, if anything, if you're aware of it, are these next generation of leaders facing in some of your members' businesses?
Yes. And many of them that have been working in the business understand that it's a difficult place to run a business. But some of the trends I've seen are there's in the last, 8 years we've been around, a lot more family businesses bring on outside directors that are not family members. It used to be, I'll never forget one of our chairmen at CBIA told me, Yeah, well, my board of directors is pretty easy to handle. It's me. In other words, he just made the decisions. And he said, one thing that's interesting about working in an association is I'm sitting in a room I'm like George Steinbrenner. I'm sitting in a room with 12 George Steinbrenners, and it's hard for us to make a decision. Or in my own business, I just call the shots and do whatever I want to do. So the outside directors bring a really interesting new perspective in, and most of them would have some expertise in family businesses. I mean, they're just, way out there, but they've owned another family business, so that kind of thing, or at least, maybe it's an accountant that's done a lot of family business work, and et cetera. So that's one trend. The other trend is, as they grow, they'll bring in an outside CEO because they may not have the expertise, educational background, or whatever to run a big company that dad and mom built. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden it's, wow, that's pretty overwhelming. Dad and mom did a great job, but I don't know if I'm ready for that. So the family can keep, their stock in the company, they can keep ownership, and they bring in the outside CEO and keep going. And it works pretty well. And usually some family member is chairman of the board and keeps that going. So that's another trend I've seen. And then some of the family businesses sell with ESOPs. They sell it to their employees. Yep. And you can actually sell 40% of the company and still be a family business because you have 51%, so you have control. Some that may not have a family member that wants to take over will sell the whole company. I've seen quite a few of the variations of that. But you're absolutely right in that whatever dad and mom did probably is not going to work today. It's a whole different paradigm here in California, and you better be ready. I have one of our directors actually has a business where he counsels family businesses on how they should succeed. Mm-hmm. And they'll put a protocol together to hand to family members who are coming up, out of college and whatever, saying, unfortunately, you're not going to start with a corner office in a BMW. You're not going to start as vice president or whatever. If a certain job takes a certain educational background, you're going to have to get it, and on and on. And that's kind of a rude awakening for some of the family business members or people coming in saying, "Oh my gosh, this is serious stuff." So that's disruptive too.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, the book I wrote was written for that next generation leader who needs to understand that if you're going to scale a family business, it's like scaling any other business. You need to have a playbook. You need to understand that everyone's got a function and a position, and you've got to sort of turn what might have been sort of a loose and structure into a more corporate, more managed organization.
Yes.
And that's a formula for success. The challenge, of course, is you've got the backdrop or the psychodynamics that are going on, the family relationships, maybe rivalry among siblings, or father son, mother daughter, whatever. You've got to that is playing out alongside this. And so I think the outside directors, now does that also expand to outside advisors? So they're not actually on the board, but they're an informal board of advisors. So I'm seeing that as well.
People like you that guide people through.
Yep.
Maybe do some long range financial planning that had never been done because things kind of happened and rolled along and everything's going well. And the other thing I've noticed is that when you get down to the third generation, you're dealing with a lot of cousins. Mm-hmm. And then there's like maybe a rivalry as to, okay, which cousin is going to get to be CEO? And they may not have spent a lot of time together, know each other real well. And so that brings in a whole other dynamic too. And like you said, the sibling rivalries can be, some siblings get along really well, some don't.
Yeah, I mean, in my clients where I'm acting as an outside advisor, I'm bringing that impartial voice that they can listen to. But in a larger multi-generational business, you could use a whole group of outside voices that might have some authority in guiding them in terms of compensation, in terms of who takes the leadership role. And now you've also got issues with equity, and how do you divide that up? And now I don't imagine the association gets involved in that type of work, or do you provide some peer learning, some education and networking, as well as the advocacy at the lobbying, political level?
We do not, for this reason. We were preceded by family business centers. Mm-hmm. There were 4 or 5 in California. Some are affiliated with universities, like in Fresno State. Mm-hmm. Some, like here in Sacramento, are independent, but they are 501c3 tax exempt corporations, and they provide education, and that's basically all they can do. So when we were put into business by our founders, we agreed that we would not compete with them and do what they do, because they do a nice job of it. And they really can't compete with us, and really don't want to, because lobbying and education are pretty much, even though when you're lobbying, you're educating people, it's a different kind of education.
Sure.
So they do a lot of that. They have one of the most successful ones is the Capital Region Family Business Center here in Sacramento. Mm-hmm. And they have G1 meetings, G2 meetings, G3 being generation.
Yep.
And they'll have a whole council of G3s who are third generation people who kind of, a lot of times are about the same age group and stuff. And they do a lot of that. They have a council of women CEOs, because that's kind of a relatively new phenomenon for a lot of family businesses.
Yes.
And so they do a very nice job of doing all that. It's been challenging for them with this COVID thing, because so much of what they do really takes face-to-face. You can do it through Zoom, but it's really nice to get together and
sure.
Maybe have a cocktail together and talk about what's
really going on.
Things which you can't really do real well through a Zoom.
Yeah.
Meeting.
So it doesn't seem like there's that much of it in Los Angeles. I know there's a program down in Fullerton. I have a guest coming on in a week or so who's with Cal State University Fullerton. Right. And I don't know of anything going on in the San Francisco Bay Area that's connected.
So Ed Hart runs the Fullerton Association, yes. And he does a very nice job down there. I've been down to their meetings. They're very good.
Yes.
USC had one. It's kind of on the shelf now, as I understand it. I think they're trying to redo it. UCLA does an educational program
right
here for family businesses. San Diego State had one that kind of is inactive, as far as I know. University of San Diego does some work in that area. USF, University of San Francisco, has a family business program. Many of them, though, it's kind of an adjunct to other things they do, and they bring family business leaders together maybe once a year for a little program or something, and they don't do really the full range of things.
Right.
So they're more academically oriented, and the Sacramento group stayed independent, which has probably been a nice thing for them, because they're free of any other types of controls or anything else.
And so if you were a family business concerned with issues that were going on that were in this realm, where would you turn to in California?
Well, if I was in Sacramento, I would turn to the Family Business Center here.
Sure.
And there are several consultants like you who do a nice job of it and have a lot of experience with multiple kinds of families. So those are the two things I would do. I'd try to find, and we have people who wished we'd do more of that, but again, we said we wouldn't, because we didn't want to compete with, we didn't want to have 12 universities in the state upset with us or whatever. Understood
your mission and your purpose, and appreciate what you're doing. So tell us, how can people get a hold of you, and also give us a little information on maybe the fee structure, so that they would know what it would cost to join if they were interested.
Yes. So we have a website that's nice. It's myfba.org. Mm-hmm. And we have a little 2-minute video that really shows what we do, I think, in a nice way. We have 14 sponsors that really help us put on events and things. And the due structure is based on revenue. And somebody that's under $2.5 million just pays $250 a year. And then it goes up to 500, up to 10 million, and then 1,000, and then 2,500. And the big companies that are over 100 million in revenue pay $5,000. So it's based on how successful you've been and how large you are. The smaller, we have quite a few of the smaller companies because they want to be involved too, and they'd like to grow their business, and they just realize that they probably ought to be putting some money up because there are a lot of issues to fight.
Absolutely. Well, Robert, thanks so much for taking your time to be with us today and be with me and our listeners. And any final parting words that you'd like to share? Or?
Yes, I would. Family businesses, to me, are the heart and soul of California's business community. They're wonderful employers. They're great. I love working with them. They care about their people. I'll never forget, I was playing golf one day and I was put with a fellow who asked him what he did. And he said, well, I just retired from this. I was a truck driver for this company. And I said, the owner's a good friend of mine. And the business has a few thousand employees. He said, well, one of the best things that ever happened in my career is the owner of the company came and gave me my plaque when I retired. And that's the kind of thing you don't often see in the big multinational corporations and things. That level of caring for people, wanting them to do well. This same gentleman's the first one to be at a hospital if one of his people is injured because it's a construction company. So, that happens. And so the family businesses are wonderful employers. I wish they had more respect at the Capitol. Not that we don't have it, but we could use even more because so many things that are done are really detrimental to family businesses. That's why we're here. We're going to keep fighting. And it's a big fight. We're going to keep it up.
Well, again, thanks so much for spending time and for sharing your pearls of wisdom and resources. And so this is Jonathan Goldhill, host of the Disruptive Successor Show. And thanks for your time and listening.
Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.